The Cookhouse is an incredible resource. I think the biggest issue associated with it, particularly what I found, is getting an appointment is the hardest thing. It's a relatively small service, I suppose, and there's a really great need at USC's campus.
I actually knew about the Cookhouse when I was a freshman. So I found out about it I was in a sorority, Kappa Alpha Theta. That's how I found out about it, because like each week we do like weekly updates. And I remember at the beginning for all the freshmen, they were like telling us everything on campus available. So I think that's how I knew about it right away. So I kind of knew about it freshman year, and then when that time hit, when I was a junior, I was like, okay, I'm gonna go in. I think I honestly made Brittany walk me there.
It's been interesting for me to get services there because it was when I was at my worst point in terms of symptoms. And there's kind of a hierarchy in terms of needs at the Cookhouse, just because there is such a great demand with such a low supply.
The need is very apparent that there's an increase in the necessity for more mental health services, not only on USD's campus, but I think on all college campuses across the US. And the big question that comes into play then is funding. How do we pay for more counselors, more longer hours for these services to be offered? And I think that that's something that USD has run into as well. Each year, I know we've been increasing our staff at the Cookhouse, but with that increase in staff, there's a continual growing need as well.
I have had other people that I know that have been denied services because it's not life-threatening enough, which is interesting. Then our mental health has to be put on this hierarchy of, okay, do you want to die? Well, okay, if not, then you're gonna have to you're gonna have to wait a week or two.
It's very hard to find someone that you're comfortable with. I've gone through probably 8 therapists until I found the one that I have had since high school, and I won't see anyone else, because if you don't feel safe or feel like they understand you or that they can help you, then you're not going to get anything out of it.
Even within our generation, mental illness is something that our generation is much more comfortable talking about, which is really, I think, beneficial for people that are uncomfortable either talking about it or even acknowledging it within their lives. I think it's been a really cool transition to see at USD kind of how much more open the community has been to it. And it hasn't necessarily just been me, it's been actors across the board, even within the administration, that have made mental illness a priority. And so I think there's a long road to go with that and kind of normalizing mental health, but also providing services to people. But it's been really fascinating to see the community kind of rally around normalizing it and normalizing things like therapy or medication. And even just being able to talk about these things in public. It's been a really healthy environment at USD.
I get anxious about missing class. I don't want to miss class. That's the last thing I want to do. So I would worry about if I were to have an anxiety attack before it even happens and me not being able to get to class. So one of my professors was like, why don't you go talk to disability services? So I did, and they informed me that they couldn't really do anything, that the only thing that they really could do was if I had testing anxiety, they could get me a different time or a different place to take the test, but they couldn't do anything about attendance. So that was frustrating to hear.
I mean, somewhat. I think that there are definitely some professors and faculty that are far more understanding about it, which is great. I mean, I think that that's a huge component of setting that culture around, the stigma of mental health is the interaction between student and faculty. And I think that some faculty are more understanding, but I think that there's a good amount of faculty that still struggle or maybe to know what to say when a student comes to you and says, yeah, I haven't been to class in a month and I haven't done any assignments in a month, and I don't know why. I'm feeling sad and I'm feeling this, and I don't know why. And while I understand that, as a professor, it can be a lot to handle when you have so many different students, but I think that it's something that really needs to be taken seriously, and I think it would benefit students a lot more if there was maybe more of a set in stone plan of action when professors thought that maybe students were struggling with their mental health.
But I know a lot of professors have their own personal systems, so most of the professors that when I have had to miss class, they are really accommodating and understand. So that's nice. But yeah, it's kind of frustrating that there's nothing in place for the university.
I think it's an issue that the university is looking at and that a lot of universities are struggling with, but it really comes down to that finance component of how do they find enough resources, financial resources, to keep up with that growing need.
There are days where I can't get out of bed, and there's classes that are mandatory, and it's something that's definitely hard because I get anxious thinking about it, because I automatically is like, oh, well, my professors think I'm making this up. They don't think it's a real thing. They think I'm just skipping, when really, like, I cannot get out of bed. Like, I'm a crying mess and I can't get to class. And so that's the hardest thing for me, because you wouldn't expect someone who has mono or the flu or something to be in class, because it's takes a physical toll on them, where anxiety and depression and any mental illness takes just as much of a toll on.
Accessibility to therapy would certainly be helpful. It's one of those things that I think a lot of students are seeking services, and it's just the capacity is such that it's not super possible. And I understand that's a funding thing and that's allocation of resources. So that's a difficult process, and I'm not near smart enough to solve it. But even if there were more services available, I think it would become more normalized for people to even go to therapy.
Let's just start the conversation. Let's like educate people, and then I also would tell like my personal story, is saying like, hey, like I struggle with this too. Like I might look like just normal from the outside, but it's like everyone has their own battle, I think, they face, whether it might be depression or like a loved one that's sick. I think there's just a lot of things people don't talk about because they don't feel comfortable or they feel like they're going to get judged.
Traumatic incidents aren't the only reason people can go to therapy. And my mom told me when I was young, Maddie, everybody in the world needs a therapist because life's too hard to go through on your own. And so even having the ability to do so, I think would make it more normal for the student body population to kind of talk about things that are going on and kind of get help through the daily life.
Get help. Like, if you're struggling, like, don't be afraid. Like, if you don't know me, you recognize my face or see me on here, like, I'm open to talking about anything. Like, you're not alone and you're not crazy. Like, we all go through stuff, and just don't think you have to do it alone, because that's when things can get bad, and it doesn't have to be bad. Like, sometimes it's okay to not be okay, but you'll always get through it. And so I think that's the biggest thing. Like, if you think you need help, then reach out for it.